What's up, sports fans, and welcome to the Sports Opinions Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Alex Cuesta. With me today is a guy that I connected on with Twitter via the Sports Opinions Podcast Twitter, and he was just a fun follow. He had a lot of good comments. There was only one downside to him. He's a real big Cleveland guy. He is the VP of Cleveland Sports Talk, co-host of the Browns Blitz Podcast, Rod Bluhm. What up, Rod?
Hey, Alex. How you doing tonight?
Good. I apologize. I had to take a minor jab at Cleveland. Even though I'm a Jets fan, it's still always fun.
Hey, we're used to it in Cleveland. That's all right.
Yeah, the fun part is, being a Jets fan, I kind of took the realization that there's not that much difference between the Jets franchise and Browns, except you guys have had the better great player in your franchise.
Yeah, probably. It's been a while. You guys have to go back a little ways for a great player, don't you?
Curtis Martin. I'd give Curtis
Martin,
and Darrelle Revis. I don't think we're that far.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Kind of, it's all in the perception, I guess. You know, I'm thinking Jets. I'm thinking Joe Namath, but you guys have had some good players since Joe Namath. But he's like kind of the Mr. Jet, you know, with winning the Super Bowl and everything.
Yeah, the only Super Bowl the Jets won. So yeah, I could definitely see how other fans would go Jets right away. So Rod, any plugs on social media? Obviously, we talked earlier. Your Browns Blitz podcast is coming out. Is there an episode already out yet? What is going on with that?
Yeah, we actually recorded last night, and the first episode is up. Went up late last night, early this morning. So you can find that on my Twitter, or you can go right to the Browns Blitz Twitter, which is at the Browns Blitz, and check that out.
Awesome. And so just so everyone knows, it's February 20th. It's a Wednesday. It's an early recording day for me with the podcast, but just so everyone knows when they're listening to this, that the Brown Blitz came out earlier than when this is going to be out. This is probably going to be out Friday or something like that. So podcast is out there. Are there any other platforms that they can, like, if someone has Spotify or anything, where is in terms of the podcast, where is this out? Is this just on the website right now?
It'll be on Twitter, the website there. You can actually find it at the Grueling Truth. They're going to be putting us out, and they'll have us on Spotify as well. So that might be a few days, kind of getting it all together with being the first episode, but we'll be on Spotify and on iTunes as well.
Sweet deal. So any other plugs you want to give social media wise, that people can find you, your work, anything that you're doing?
You can find me at CSTRodB. That's my Twitter account. And Cleveland Sports Talk is at CLE Sports Talk. And you can find my stuff there, and as well as all of the other writers. We have a great staff that puts out a lot of stuff about not only the Browns, but the Cavs and the Indians and draft coverage. So we've got a lot going on right now. So Cleveland fan or just a football fan in general, I guess this time of year it's probably football for the most part. We've kind of given up on the Cavaliers, and a little bit early for the Indians. So definitely a good follow. We've got a good following, and we put out a good product at Cleveland Sports Talk.
Yeah, we're going to kind of touch on all those. Definitely Browns and Indians, a little bit, I guess, like outskirts skating with the Cavaliers. But in reality, it's kind of interesting. I don't think people realize it hasn't really been a bad thing to be a Cleveland sports fans lately. The Browns are turning it around, even though it's still kind of fun. They are turning around. I believe in that front office. They're a lot better than they have been in the past. Baker looks like he's pretty good. You've had the Cavs with LeBron. The Indians have been a good team. They were just in the World Series a few years ago. So it's really like the perception of Cleveland sports is not great, but from being in Cleveland right now, it's been pretty good being a Cleveland sports fan. Am I wrong looking from this on the outside? No,
you're absolutely right. And the thing that really changed was the Cavs winning that championship in 2016. It kind of lifted a huge weight off the city, because it had been so long since the mid-'60s, 1964, since the city had won the championship. So just having that gone away, where it had been a generation or two since the city had seen a championship, it took pressure off. It just put fun back into sports. And I think people started believing, hey, if the Cavs can win a championship, maybe we'll actually see the Indians win one. Maybe even one day the Browns could become relevant again and do something. And since then, yeah, we saw the Indians go to the series, and we were watching the Browns. At this point, I'll just say they're relevant. So we still need to see a lot more growth, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But yeah, that championship it's funny how some cities, collect championships like crazy, and one championship can just have so much meaning for a town like Cleveland.
Yeah, seriously. Now, before we really get into nitty-gritty in the podcast, I have to ask you, being from Cleveland, did you really or ever believe that Johnny Manziel was going to be the answer at quarterback when he was drafted?
No, I did not like the pick at all.
What is it about Johnny? Was it his talent? Was it just his bravado? Was he just not what a Cleveland guy should be in terms of what you guys are expecting out of the quarterback leading the team?
I didn't like the whole, and it's funny, I'll say this, I didn't like the Heisman, the bravado, the money, his signs, all this. I want a guy to come in and act like he's been there, do his job, and I think that's the kind of city that Cleveland is. Cleveland's not a Hollywood type city. I didn't think he fit. I didn't like his size, first of all. I thought he was overrated for the NFL. And I think there was a big division between fans. I think a lot of the younger fans loved him. They thought he was going to be the answer. And I think people who had been around and had seen Cleveland go through just the the number of quarterbacks, the count, which we don't have to hear anymore. Oh, Cleveland's had 26, 27, 28, 29 starting quarterbacks.
ESPN loves to go through that.
Yeah, so those of us who have lived to have seen all of those guys play, I think we really didn't feel good about the Johnny Manziel thing and the pick. I didn't like it, and the fact that he was picked at the 22 spot, and he was, I think, the third quarterback they've taken there, and the third quarterback there to fail. It just didn't feel like the right pick.
And it kind of rubs your nose in it a little more when the guy who absolutely loved him, Jerry Jones, for the Cowboys, passed on him. That has to be a red flag, and where the Cleveland shouldn't have taken him, because if a guy like Jerry Jones, who really doesn't let anybody stop him, gets talked out of taking him for an offensive lineman, that should have been flags right there.
Well, the problem is the Browns owner is the one who made that pick. He went over the coach's head, over the GM's head, and pretty much made the GM make that pick. He suggested it, and the GM Ray Farmer figured he had to make that pick in order to make the owner happy. So he really ended up sacrificing his job in order to make the owner happy by making that pick. And it was a terrible pick. It just was.
Yeah, it's funny how that works, where guys think that they're saving their job when in reality they just put themselves in their grave in terms of their job. But that's a great transition into your current starting quarterback. He had a great rookie year, Baker Mayfield. He was a guy that, being a Jets fan, I actually liked him more than I like Sam Darnold, the guy I currently have. And now I love Sam Darnold. I'm obviously going to support him, but I do root for Baker. Now, some things that you said about Johnny Manziel can really be kind of put onto Baker, I think, on a lower level. Baker does have a chip on his shoulder. He does have bravado. He is a little undersized. There were some people that thought he was a little overrated. I thought overall he was a better thrower of the football than Johnny Manziel from the get-go. And I also thought that he had a different type of bravado where it wasn't necessarily cockiness. It was kind of, I'm just going to come in and kick your ass. I'm going to do whatever it takes. Did you kind of have a little bit of trepidation when they picked him? Was it kind of like, oh, this could be Johnny all over again type of thing?
I did, but I didn't think it was Johnny. But I thought the quarterback class was very hard to determine. I'll tell you, I wanted the Browns to take Darnold number one.
And it's crazy you said that, to hard to determine, because it is weird that we're looking at this quarterback class where normally everyone was raging about 3, 4, 5 guys. When you have 3, 4, 5 guys that you can't differentiate from, normally that means they're all pretty bad. Like that no one's separating. Nobody's great. It's very rare that you have these 3 guys that are actually decent in Mayfield, Darnold. Even Allen had a few games last year. And then it's a weird class. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. My opinion was that the top 4 guys all had a chance to have good NFL careers. That was kind of my thought. I thought Darnold had, in my opinion, I thought he was the guy that they should have taken. That's just my thought. I'm no quarterback guru. There are plenty of guys out there, and all the quarterback gurus didn't even agree on that class. So who am I to say, he was definitely the pick?
Yeah.
So I was a little disappointed when the pick was made. But I have to tell you, the difference between Baker and Johnny Manziel is there was a difference beforehand. First of all, I think Baker, I don't know height-wise, he's probably maybe a little bit taller, I don't know. But he's a lot stockier guy. He's probably got 15 pounds on Johnny Manziel.
Yeah.
But he's just a whole heck of a lot better quarterback. But the main difference is the bravado totally changed when he got to Cleveland. He wasn't the plant the flag kind of guy. And now people may have seen some of the stuff he did after scoring in games, but when he got into town, he was all business, just doing his job and learning, and a team guy. And he was the guy that I wanted to see at quarterback. I don't mean to start the season, but he was the type of guy that I wanted as our quarterback once he got here. So I didn't like the pick, but as soon as the pick was made, I'm like, that's my guy. That's how I'm going to be. I'm a Browns fan, and I'm sure that's how you are with the Jets. You may not like the pick when it's made, but as soon as the pick's made, you're going to support that guy no matter what.
Without a doubt. I hated the Mark Sanchez pick, but I had to support him. And with Baker, it's interesting because I ingest a lot of sports talk radio, especially on the New York end, but I do like to listen to some of the syndicated stuff. And one of the guys that I know he gets a lot of crap, Colin Cowherd. I actually don't mind listening to the herd. I don't mind listening to Colin Cowherd. And I give a lot of credit to guys like him, Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless, who get a lot wrong, who get a lot of crap, but their whole job is to have these opinions. And they make these and they formulate them. One thing I like about Colin Cowherd is he has a policy. If he talks crap about you, he always invites you on the show. And you can come and you could talk with him. And it came to a situation where he said flat out about Baker. There were red flags. There were things he didn't like. And he invited Baker on the show. Baker came on the show, and I listened to that one live. His answers just showed leaps and bounds that he was a mature individual that made some heat-of-the-moment decisions with the crotch grabbing and being involved in that police incident, which he wasn't actually involved in, but it just looked bad from the outside looking in. And his answers and just the way he carried himself in front of a national audience, that Colin Cowherd has a huge audience.
Right.
He won me over there, completely and totally won me over, and said this guy is at least going to work hard enough to be successful, whether or not his physical abilities allow it. We didn't know then, but he's going to work hard enough and do the right things. I was confident from that point.
Right, and that's what I saw when he got to Cleveland, was that maturity. That's exactly the same thing. I saw it out of him. I saw it out of Nick Chubb and some of the other guys.
Oh, you guys had a steal. Your draft was unbelievable. And you've had some great drafts since Dorsey has come in. He has been a drafting beast with guys like Myles Garrett. And it's just been great, the guys you've gotten. And he's built something there. And I think the patience has been very nice in Cleveland lately. I'm
going to back you up because Myles Garrett, Jabril Peppers, David Njoku, those guys were taken by Sashi Brown. They weren't even taken by John Dorsey.
Oh, so
John
the plan was already in place. He just kind of
he's only done one draft. So he's only coming up on his second off season.
Oh, I think Baker is starting off well on Nick Chubb, though.
Oh yeah. I totally agree. The last draft was really. I don't think it could have been a whole lot better. Now, people are going to complain about a couple of these second round picks, but we still have to see what happens there. But when you get Baker and Denzel Ward and Nick Chubb and Jannard Avery all in the same draft, I'm pretty darn happy.
So I have to ask, from a guy that, from the outside looking in, the whole Hugh Jackson thing was super messy. And guys that did look super mature, like Baker Mayfield. Once Hugh was gone, you guys played against him as he was a coordinator or a guy on other staff, and even, rubbed it in his face, the success during games.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, from a guy that was there, like the national news, the Northeast news over here didn't cover it as well. What was it about Hugh that just made a bunch of professionals just hate him that much? What did he do to those guys who, for the most part, were pretty upstanding guys, just played the game? But when Hugh Jackson was there, they just became, their emotions took over. What caused this guy, who was pretty good in football circles before this, to be hated so much?
Well, Hugh had to have it his way. I don't think he listened to the players much. And just things like with Baker, I think you probably saw in Hard Knocks when he called Baker in and said, "Congratulations, you've won the backup job as the quarterback." Just things like that. And I think Hugh put a lot on. I think part of it was Hugh's tour after his media tour after leaving Cleveland. The fact that he just kept reinforcing that he didn't have the talent and things like that. So he put a lot of it back on the players.
Which you shouldn't do. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't
do. Obviously, Hugh left after winning, I think, three games in a year and a half, and
yeah, you lick your wounds and you kind of move on there. You don't rub it in, and that was unprofessional, very unprofessional. So I get that. Yeah,
so Greg Williams takes over, and they go 5-3 the rest of the way with the same roster.
And now the Jets have Greg Williams. Look at how full circle this podcast has become right now.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you, there was something controversial recently where I'm looking at it. It's controversial, but it's the Browns going all in. Recently, the Browns signed Kareem Hunt, and Kareem Hunt has the domestic issue, which, when you watch the video and there's no sound. There's no words. Apparently, that female that he kicked, which, if you watch the video again, I'm not condoning any sort of violence against anybody, women or anything. I think it's all wrong. But he barely nudged her. He paid the consequence. And, apparently she was dropping N-bombs at him left and right. Mm-hmm. There's only so much verbal. Yeah, he should walk away. Yeah, he's worth more. You know what I mean? But overall, throughout all that, he's obviously getting a second chance because he's young enough to be effective. Browns take him. What is your feeling when he gets picked up, and how are you feeling now after it's kind of processed?
Well, I have to tell you, our first podcast on the Browns Blitz, we talked about this issue, and we talked about it for a full 35 minutes. We had Cleveland Kate on, who wrote an article about it, and we dissected the whole issue for the entire podcast. And I think really all three of us, Kate, myself, and Sam, Maddie, my partner, kind of all pretty much in the same spot. You're kind of conflicted at first because you see that the Browns added this very talented football player, but you don't really like it because you don't condone the act. You don't agree with the act. You hate the act of what he did. And I understand that there were circumstances, but this guy is a professional athlete. He's somebody who should know that he has a public profile. Even if he doesn't, you need to know better than to hit a woman.
Without a doubt. And I think you need to know better than to hit anybody. I think
agree.
You should just not, obviously women next level, but anyone in general, you should not be hitting them. And this kind of goes to the narrative of, look at Ray Rice, another situation where on video, obviously he was much more egregious. He knocked her out completely, and that's triple as bad. But the bottom line is Ray wasn't as valuable of a player, and Kareem Hunt still has a lot of value. And
Ray was I think he had played 9 years at that point.
Yeah, and it's kind of but at bottom line, it goes, if you can still play, i.e., Randy Gregory's and things like that, then people are going to take a chance on you and look past it, which is not right. It's not right. I
And
think the penalty should be the penalty.
well, Cleveland Kate made this observation that the difference between Ray Rice and Kareem Hunt is that Ray Rice did this to his fiance, girlfriend, wife, who whatever the case was, which really makes it domestic violence. Whereas Kareem Hunt, his was, you can almost, again, you're not excusing the act, but you can almost see this as a bad decision, a mistake where alcohol's involved,
More
and
of an
it's something
altercation than
stupid. Yeah, more of an
yeah.
altercation than straight domestic violence of I'm with somebody and they're not doing it my way, so I'm going to keep beating them up.
Yeah, an altercation involving a female is basically
Right.
it's kind of it's a little bit of window dressing when you look at it, but I
Yeah,
agree it's kind of semantics. Again, it's all wrong,
it
but
does. It does.
it's a really tough spot. And and the sad thing is, and me and you are sitting right here, if Kareem Hunt ends up getting 3 straight 100-yard games, has 4 touchdowns in 3 games, you and I both are going to sit there and this is going to be in the back of our mind, but it's not really going to be there because he's playing good football and Cleveland might be winning games. So it's a tough situation where you're going to be rooting for the guy. And I don't mind watching Cleveland win. So we're all going to be rooting for him. And, it's going to come up in a conversation after you stand up and cheer for him. But like, yeah, he kicked a woman this past offseason. It's going to be like, oh yeah, right.
It's a very complicated issue, and it's going to be very interesting to see how it unfolds because there are so many parts to it. Because he's still going to end up serving a portion of a suspension. It sounds like anywhere from 6 to 10 games of this season. He may still miss. At least that's what people are saying. I don't know if that's an educated guess or whatnot, but and of course we have Nick Chubb who darn it, was right around 1,000 yards, and he barely played half the season last year.
But
So,
health is his issue. Health has been Chubb's issue since college.
well, sure, and that's I totally agree. I mean, you can never have too much strength in your backfield because running backs get the crap beat out of them all the time. So, having depth at running back at the running back position is definitely a good thing. So we'll just have to see how the suspension goes, how Nick Chubb plays as far as his health, and see what happens. But I think of course people are going to root for Kareem Hunt to do well, but John Dorsey also said he's got a zero tolerance policy in place here. So if Kareem Hunt messes up at any point in time while he's with the Browns, he's going to be gone.
I hope he sticks with that. I do, but I also do believe in second chances. So let's see if this was an actual mistake from a young guy who didn't realize, not didn't realize, but just made a mistake, and then he's a model citizen. Good for him. So we're gonna slide on. I had Cleveland last year picked at 9-7 as my wild card team. They disappointed, but they did play well. So they almost fulfilled my thing.
They could have won 9.
Absolutely. You guys add Kareem Hunt. For the most part, you still have a really solid defense. Everything else around there, Jarvis Landry still exists. Baker's only going to get better. I think that you guys are a playoff team now. And especially with the turmoil in Pittsburgh, Flacco's gone, and they have a running back for a quarterback. Cincinnati is Cincinnati. The Bungles exist. I feel like you guys can win the division this year with the team. I don't think you have to make any more moves. How do you feel right now?
I think most of us feel that way. I think people are maybe a little bit afraid to kind of express that just because.
Don't be. Baker is the football LeBron. Embrace it.
Oh, I know. And we see that. I think being in the AFC North, I don't want to be too quick to just write the Steelers off. The Steelers have a way of bouncing back. They just do. The Bengals are the Bengals. And I agree with you. I think the Ravens really are less of a concern to me than the Steelers. And I think the Browns, I think the Browns have a solid shot, at winning 10 games. We'll see what they do in free agency in the draft, but I think 10 games, would win the division, and we'll see where we go from there.
Calling it right here, right now, February 20th, the Browns win 10 to 11 games and win the division. They win the AFC North. You heard it on the Sports Opinions podcast. Cleveland faithful, if you're listening, hopefully you guys start to like this podcast a little more. But I am calling it Cleveland Browns win this division right now.
I agree with you.
So there you go. So I mentioned LeBron. We're going to slide into this. We're not going to touch for too long on it because this is something that always spoken about ad nauseum. But I have to ask you, being from Cleveland, being in the culture, in the sports world there, how has Cleveland been affected with, getting LeBron? LeBron leaves. Everyone hates LeBron. LeBron comes back. He wins a championship, and then he leaves again. I saw a lot of Cleveland fans were okay with him leaving this time. They were more gracious. They saw it. They saw all the heavy lifting he had to do just to get to the championship. He got you guys to like 2 or 3 more in a row. Now he's gone. What is it now? Is the state okay with LeBron? Is Ohio cool with LeBron now? Can he come back whenever he wants? Is it okay now?
He can come back whenever he wants.
He's a hero. That's it.
It goes back to 2016. He did something that no other athlete has done in Cleveland in what, 50 plus years, we'll say. So, he brought a championship to the city. And people can talk about Kyrie making the shot. We know LeBron. Without LeBron, that championship's not won. So LeBron came back. He fulfilled his promise to bring a championship to Cleveland. And I'm getting choked up just even talking about it.
Well, yeah, Kyrie made the shot, but Kyrie had 2 or 3 years before that, and you guys were lottery teams. So there you go. LeBron, Kyrie's great, but people tend to forget, yes, young Kyrie, he was a rookie, whatever, but that was his keys. That was his team. He couldn't do it, so LeBron came back. I guarantee if Cleveland was a playoff team, LeBron wouldn't have come back because he would have been like, all right, my team, my city's in good hands. I'm going to do me. He saw it wasn't, and he came back.
Right. So he came back. He fulfilled his promise. I think don't get me wrong. Everybody wanted him to stay. I think a lot of us thought there was a good shot that he was going to stay.
There absolutely was a good shot he was going to stay. That was definitely in the cards. His relationship with the owner was too bad, though, honestly.
Yeah, that's the reason he didn't. I think I still, and I know he had the residence out in LA and connections and that, but him picking the Lakers was still a shock to a lot of us. And I think the way it's gone out in LA just kind of reinforces the fact that it probably was not the best decision, not for his career and his legacy, to go to the Lakers.
See, I think he'll be fine. I think right now they're going through road bumps. Remember the first year with Miami. It didn't really come together, and he's biding his time. I think Anthony Davis ends up there. I think Kevin Durant ends up there, and I think they're going to be A-okay. Unfortunately, for anyone that's in Cleveland that's rooting for LeBron to not do well, I know there's probably some people that still dislike the fact that he left again. But
well, let me tell you this: in Cleveland, we will always root for LeBron over Golden State. There's no doubt about that.
It's funny. Golden State has been my second favorite team. I'm a Brooklyn Nets fan. I'm from Jersey, so I was a Jersey Nets fan. But when I was younger, I loved Jason Richardson and just how good of a player he was. So I've been with the Warriors as my second favorite team since they were awful. And now this team, I liked them up until Durant went to them. And then I was kind of like, now they're cheating. Before, when they were homemade, they made great draft picks. I love Steph Curry out of Davidson. I was cool with them winning and being dominant and being amazing. Mm-hmm. Then Kevin goes there, and I still like the Warriors. I'm not going to hate them, but it's kind of now I'm like, someone needs to beat them. Just someone needs to do it. Get Durant out of there.
I don't think it's good. People talk about dynasties. I don't think dynasties are good really for any sport. That's just my opinion.
They're good when they're either organic or they're so good at being the villain that they're interesting. Like the Patriots were a fun dynasty because they were interesting. Now they're not interesting anymore. And the Patriots dynasty is not interesting. It was interesting for a while, but it's not now. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
So last thing about LeBron, last 2 things. Is he the greatest player of all time over Michael, in your opinion? And also, is his legacy completely secure, regardless of even what goes down in LA?
Well, the thing about basketball, and I'll admit that I am not the biggest basketball guy. basketball and who's the greatest player is so subjective. One thing I am not is a ring counter because and counting rings may apply more to basketball than other sports, but still you have to have guys around you to win titles. That's true in any sport. So to me, I think LeBron can do things that his skill set is just greater than anybody else's who's ever played. So to me, LeBron's number one of all time. But I'm from Cleveland, so what am I going to say?
And do you think his legacy is secure now? Since he's got his championships, he got Cleveland one. Regardless of what happens in Los Angeles, is he going to be 1 or 1A forever?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
So we're going to slide into baseball. You talk about the Indians and all. Listen, your Cleveland Indians have one of the greatest sports movies about them. Major League is one of the greatest sports movies, and Major League 2 of all time. So Cleveland will always have a special place in my heart in terms of that. Like you said, the Cleveland, you guys were in the series not too long ago. People forget your pitching staff was one of the most feared in the game. You had a good enough lineup. I don't think your lineup was great, but it was definitely good enough. This year, they're kind of becoming an afterthought with the way the Yankees have rose up and with the way, the Sox and everything and Astros, and it's getting tough. Can Cleveland contend this season? How is your outlook on them?
They can contend just because of the division they're in. It's almost a foregone conclusion that they should win the division every year. Now, sooner or later, it's not going to happen. But when you look at their pitching staff and their starting pitching, of course they should win the division. Their lineup keeps getting weaker and weaker. You have Lindor and Ramirez, but
just
beyond
a quick question: how do you not address that in baseball? In baseball, where you can go out and there is no limit on how much you can spend. Yeah, there's a luxury tax cap, but you're a billionaire, and your team was just in there. You have a great staff and guys who are able to stay healthy, unlike the Mets, who have an equally as talented staff, but they can't stay healthy. That's the difference. Where you guys stay healthy, and your guys all pitch 25 games, 30 games.
Well, I think a lot of people are confused because I think they expected the Indians to try to retool. But you look around and like you said, you have the Astros and the Sox and the Yankees. These guys are all winning 100-plus games, and the playoffs are really, really tough. And the problem with the Indians, and everybody loves Terry Francona, but the problem with the Indians is their starting pitching. I think he uses these guys too much through the season, and he's got 5-6 starting pitchers that he can use. I think he needs to try to save these guys a little bit for the postseason. Because if Kluber's fried by the postseason and he can't beat Kluber in the postseason, you really don't have a shot against these other teams.
I feel like it's kind of the Kershaw effect because you expect Kluber to take the ball every 5 games and win that game and go 7, 8 innings, 9 innings and give you that. And I feel like Clayton Kershaw has that. And there's only so many guys that can be horses from day one up until the end of the World Series. You have your CC's in his prime, Randy Johnson, but it's like a rare breed of guy that could do that.
You're right.
I don't think Kershaw and Kluber, they're dominant, but I don't think they're built to pitch 40 games lights out, 45, 50 games. No one is. There's a very
not
rare
anymore. This just isn't the 1960s, 50s and 60s where guys pitched like that anymore.
Exactly. So it's tough. It's interesting though because as much as Tito has been on teams where I'm a Yankees fan, so I hate the Sox, and Cleveland is you guys have kind of been a thorn in the Yankees. Even when the Yankees were good, you guys were always decent. So it was like, okay, Cleveland's going to play us crap. We might have to see them in the playoffs. That sucks. So. It's kind of, but I like Tito Francona. I've always liked him. Even when I hated the Sox, I liked Terry Francona. Yeah. So I kind of trust him. And yeah, I think he does overuse guys, but he had guys like Kurt Schilling and guys like that he did ride that were those types of freaks where he was like, all right, I'm going to give you the ball. 8 innings. I don't care what the score is. Give me 8. Done. And I feel like he's an old school coach that way.
But he's a lot like Joe Torre when he was with the Yankees.
Yeah.
I don't. Even if you hate the Yankees, there's no way you're not going to like Joe Torre.
Even though I'm not as big of a fan as Torre now that he's in the league offices. He's kind of seems like he's softened up.
That could be.
All right. So you also mentioned that being near the Cincinnati area, you also kind of follow the Reds. So I'm going to bring them into this fold, even though, there's kind of a reason why they didn't go after any of the big names because of the Reds and no one's interested. But I was a little more, kind of perplexed because the Indians' name was mentioned both with Machado and with Harper and even with some of the other big names. And it just seems like they were mentioned, they were possibly involved and got a meeting or a conversation, but it doesn't seem like they ever pushed to get these guys, especially Machado and Harper. And I think there's names still thrown around in the Harper sweepstakes, but not as a serious player.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that, and I get it not going to the Reds suck, but why aren't people looking to go to the Indians? Is it kind of the Cleveland factor? Because you hear a lot of players say, like, why the hell would I go to Cleveland? There's nothing to do. Is it kind of that factor?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of going away with the Cavs championship.
No, it's still nationally a thing.
Well, I mean, that perception just because I don't think the Browns are going to have a problem bringing free agents in and that, and you're seeing more of Browns going to Cavs games and Indians showing up at different things and kind of trying to commingle the teams and make it an attractive destination, I think. So I think with the Indians, it probably comes down to the reputation and probably the reality that the Indians are not known to spend a lot of money.
Yeah, I hate the small market, large market label. In baseball, you could spend anything. And if you win, you make money. And that's just the bottom line. If you win a lot of games, you're going to make money as a billionaire and you're going to get more billions. So I never understand the teams that don't spend. You can't tell me
you're
that.
Saying that as a Yankees fan, your team does have the most money.
Well, yeah, us, Texas, LA, definitely. But
right.
You're telling me that the numbers didn't get a massive bump when you guys went to the World Series, that your billionaire owner didn't rake in more money? Like that has
to be. Sure, they made money, definitely.
So that has to be a factor. Like, hey, if we can spend a little more and get these fans that were just here to come back and then some next year because we're still really good. I kind of, we do have the most money, but George Steinbrenner is the one that started, like, I don't care. We're just going to spend. Because the Yankees weren't this massive spending team before the Steinbrenners. They were much more frugal. They spent. They got their superstars, but they weren't a guy that was going to go, okay, I'm going to give him 150, him 175, another 100 here. That wasn't the case before Steinbrenner. So That's kind of solidified that theory. You spend money to make money.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right.
I would have just loved to have seen the Indians get in or, be more serious about getting in on Harper or any of the other big names, some of the big arms like Kimbrel. They could have gone in on so many guys that they could have gotten.
They haven't been serious about really anybody this offseason.
It's surprising. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. There's guys they could have signed and they just haven't.
All right, so on the note of signing, we just saw Manny Machado fall. He got his 10-year, $300 million ridiculous contract from the Padres, even though it's a lot less from what a lot of pundits were calling for. They were saying like $400 million, $450 million, some stupid numbers over the last few years. So $300 million seems like a bargain in terms of that. But that's a dumb number to go to an irrelevant team and be irrelevant for a while. That's where Machado has put himself to. But even with that, it's been this long. Harper still isn't signed. He's probably going to get somewhere near like 310, 315 now. But there was a whole entire thing where the owners were colluding to get shorter contracts, to get less money. Even after this Machado thing, do you think that's still a thing that's going on where the owners are kind of like, we are tired of doling out these stupid 10-year contracts? What do you think about that?
I don't know that it's collusion. I think they're just getting a little bit smarter because look at these 10-year deals and how often the guys are shot by the time they're 4, 5, 6 years through them. I just don't think it makes sense to sign anybody or much of anybody to a 10-year deal.
I completely agree with that. I think you also look at teams like the Royals, like your Indians when you went to the series, like the Astros, like even the Mets when they went to the series. There wasn't that $200+ million player on any of those teams. What does Lindor make? He's your best player. What does he make? 100 something? And that's, your best player on the team besides Kluber.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what his salary is right now. He did not. The Indians offered him 7 years, $100 million a couple years ago, and he declined it. So
Yeah,
he's going to be a free agent in I think a year or two, and he's probably going to be gone because he'll go and get. He's going to get more money than he's probably going to get more money than Machado.
and I really wish you guys would sign him because I feel in my heart of hearts, I just throw more money at him because I feel like he's going to go to the Red Sox, and I will be so sad if he goes to the Red Sox.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up there.
Oh man,
it's sad listening to the news. It's like when just hearing people talk. Well, where can he go? Well, the only real teams that really make sense would maybe the Yankees or the Red Sox, maybe the Dodgers.
it's the same teams.
It's the
always
same
the same
teams
team
all the time. So yeah, it's sad.
Well, it comes with, like you said, the persona of, teams that are willing to spend versus teams that aren't. Yeah, these superstars, every superstar is a fit with the team that's willing to spend money, obviously. Sure. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I necessarily don't think it's a bad thing. And I don't always side with the billionaires or the owners because, yeah, they're raking in the money. What they pay out to players and everyone else, they're still bringing in a lot of money. But there is something to be said. Like you said, these 10-year contracts are stupid. And they always have been. So it's like I don't blame them for wanting to rake it in and go, no. I wanted the Yankees to offer Harper 5 years, $175 million, take it or leave it.
Yeah, well, that Machado deal has an out after 5 years, I believe. I think I'm not sure if it's a team out or
it's a player option. No, it's a player option. Machado has it, but that's a poison pill because what if Machado's skills are declining? He's not going to opt out of that. He's just going to rake in money for 5 more years and
Yeah, it would make more sense if it was a club option to be out of it.
Yeah, I doubt he would have signed that, especially with the Padres.
Well, that's true. On the other hand, yeah, you might think the Padres are not relevant in that, but my gosh, I wouldn't mind living in San Diego making $30 million a year.
Yeah, that would be nice. The only issue is he's going to give like $12 million of that back to the state every year because the taxes are insane in California, just like they are here in New York. How are taxes in Ohio?
In Ohio? Well, they're probably better than the 2 states you just talked about.
Listen, I lived in Jersey growing up. I'm in New York now. So my tax situation, I think anywhere besides California would probably be really good for me right now.
Yeah.
All right. But on that happy note about taxes, we're going to wrap up this show. Rod Bluhm, he's the VP of Cleveland Sports Talk and co-host of the new podcast, the Browns Blitz Podcast. And if you are a Cleveland fan and you like Cleveland talk, you're going to get a lot more of what you just heard of, but from a lot more knowledgeable people about Cleveland sports, including Rod. I really appreciate you coming on, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alex. It's been a lot of fun.
Definitely. And again, obviously they can find your podcast. Where else can people find you? Can people find Cleveland Sports Talk on social media and whatnot?
You can find the podcast at the Browns Blitz. And you can find me on Twitter at CSTRodB. And Cleveland Sports Talk is at CLE Sports Talk.
Awesome. And again, this is the Sports Opinions Podcast. I'm Alex Cuesta. Find me on Twitter and Instagram at @_Cuesta30. Find Sports Opinions on Twitter at SportsOpinion30. Instagram, Sports Opinions 30. Please go visit the Facebook page. Just go search Sports Opinions Podcast on Facebook. And you can hear this podcast virtually anywhere you can hear one. Go Google search the Sports Opinions Podcast. You'll find it, whether you use Spotify, Google Play Music, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, any of those. You can go say it on your Alexa or your Google Home. It'll pop up. So again, Rod, really appreciate you coming on the podcast, talking some good, fun Cleveland sports. I really think that you guys, besides the Cavs, are going to have a good time in Cleveland for the next few years.
That's great. Thanks again, Alex.
All right, everyone. Have a good one. Sports Opinion Podcast. We are out.